Hello everyone, my name is Jathield, and today I'm going to give you my review for Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. Now, I've never really been a big Star Wars fan. I mean, I enjoy Star Wars, I've seen all the movies and all that, but I haven't really read all the books or watched all the TV shows like the Clone Wars or anything like that. But I have heard that even if you're not a Star Wars fan, this game is well worth it. Now, how I came to acquire this game was through a Steam sale that happened May the 1st through May the 4th. Now, apparently May the 4th is Star Wars Day, which I did not know, but the game had been in my wish list for a long time. And since it was only about, I think, $3.50, I figured, well, this is a pretty good time to pick it up while it's on sale. So what exactly is Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy, besides being just a Star Wars game? Well, it was made by Raven Software and published by Activision back in 2003. And the game has a reputation for basically having the best lightsaber combat in any Star Wars game, and possibly even some of the best melee combat in a video game as well. And we'll get more into that later on in the review. Also, I should mention that this review will be focusing primarily on the single-player portion of the game, as I've fully completed the single-player and haven't really delved into the multiplayer at all. And I really don't have much time to get into the multiplayer enough to where I can really comment on that portion of the game. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the actual review itself. So the game has 4 difficulty settings, those being Padawan, Jedi, Jedi Knight, and Jedi Master. Padawan being the easiest difficulty setting, Jedi being medium settings, Jedi Knight being hard, and Jedi Master, of course, being the most difficult setting. The game also comes with a character creator, which is pretty limited in terms of the options, at least compared to present-day games where the character creators offer players a lot of options in customizing their character. But overall, it gets the job done, and it's a nice addition to the game. Especially since the previous game in this series, Jedi Outcast, did not have a character creator. So this character creator allows you to choose the race and sex of your character, as well as change the style and colors of the clothes that the character wears. And you can also change what head the character has as well. For the male races, your options are Human Male, Keldor Male, and Rhodian Male. For the female races, the options are Human Female, Twi'lek Female, and Zabrak Female. Or Zabrak. Not sure how you pronounce that one. And of course, once you have your character created, you can then customize your lightsaber. You can change what hilt the lightsaber is, and of course what color it is as well. And then once you've done all that, you can start the game. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the actual story of the game, and I'm going to try my best to avoid any spoilers, at least any major spoilers, but there might be a few minor spoilers here and there throughout the review. Anyway, the gist of the story is that you are a young Jedi apprentice who is aspiring to be a Jedi Knight and is training at the Academy, with a man named Kyle Katarn as your teacher. And he sends you on missions to different planets throughout the galaxy so that you can discover more about this Sith cult, which is causing a lot of trouble throughout the galaxy, with the help of the Imperial Remnants. I say Imperial Remnants since this game takes place after the events of Return of the Jedi, from the original Star Wars trilogy. And throughout the story, you get to interact with various famous characters throughout the Star Wars universe, including Luke Skywalker, Chewbacca, and Boba Fett.
Boba Fett?
This doesn't concern you, Jedi. Just walk away.
Look,
Okay, so now for this next section, I'm going to talk about the missions and level design in the game. So, what's cool about this is you can actually choose which missions you want to do on the galactic map. So you're presented with a total of 5 missions, and you can complete them in any order. And all these missions offer different scenarios that the player has to deal with while doing them. And these missions will take place on planets that are found within the Star Wars universe, such as Coruscant and Tatooine. Because of course it wouldn't be a Star Wars game if it didn't have a desert planet such as Tatooine in it.
I don't like sand.
Now before each mission starts, the player can customize their loadout, You always have your lightsaber and a blaster pistol, but you can choose to bring 2 different types of main weapons with you on the mission. And I'll go into more detail about the ranged weapons and their functions in the gameplay portion of this video. And you can choose to bring one of 3 explosives with you as well. These 3 being basically a frag grenade, a C4 charge, and a trip mine. So now, as for the levels themselves, they are very linear. So you start at point A and you have to get to point B at the end. Or sometimes the levels will require you to start at point A, go to point B, but then you have to backtrack to point A. And usually each level has like a small puzzle that the player will have to solve in order to advance through it, but personally I found these puzzles to be pretty easy to figure out. So really they more act as just a way to give the player something to do in between moments of combat, which can be pretty intense at times. Now, I mentioned that each mission has its own unique scenario or challenge that the player has to complete in the level. So I'll just pick out a couple of examples here. So there's one level that involves you being on this sort of sky train or sky rail metro system, and these cultists and mercenaries have taken control of this thing. So your mission is to get to the front of the train in order to stop it. So, with the way this level is designed is you're always moving in one direction forward, but you have to be careful not to fall off the train, because if you do, then that means you'll die and you'll have to start over again. Another mission will have you placing these beacons on these Imperial structures in order for Wedge to fly over them in his X-Wing and drop a bomb on them to destroy them. And there's a total of something like 5 or 6 targets that you need to destroy in order to complete the mission. So overall, I really enjoyed the variety in how you had to complete each level. But I will say there was definitely one level that absolutely frustrated me, and I think it's the worst level in the game. And it's this level involving you riding on a speeder. So I'll just call it the speeder level. That level was definitely a pain to complete because the controls for the speeder were just completely unintuitive in my opinion. I am playing on PC, so maybe on a console it's different, maybe the controls are perfectly fine, but on PC I just found these controls to be extremely frustrating to work with, and they're just completely unintuitive because it's like if you want to turn, you have to turn using the mouse rather than using, say, the A and D keys. Instead, if you press the A key, it like jumps you to the left suddenly or jumps you to the right if you press the D key, and personally I just didn't like it. Now I played that level a second time and I was more used to it, but overall I still didn't think that I still think that control scheme for the speeders on that level was not the most intuitive for someone playing on the PC version at least. I also experienced a bug on one of the levels involving this mutated Rancor, where the level was supposed to transition over to a cutscene when you triggered this lever, but instead the game bugged out and the cutscene did not occur properly, so I ended up having to start the mission over again, but once I did that, the issue never came up again. So I really didn't experience any bugs on any of the other levels except that one. I'll also say that I do think some of the interior spaces on some of the levels were a bit too small, especially when you get into the late game and you start engaging in far more lightsaber combat. And when you're doing that kind of combat, there's really a lot of moving around and jumping that you have to do, and that's very difficult to do if you're in like a narrow hallway. So that's the only other minor criticism I would have in regards to the overall level design. But for the most part, I thought it was pretty fun and enjoyable, regardless of the issues that I mentioned in those other levels. Oh, and also you don't have to complete all 5 of the missions in order to advance through to the next major mission involving the story. So you can actually just complete 4 of the 5 missions, and then the game will give you the choice to just advance to the next story-related mission. But it's usually a good idea to do the 5th mission because then it allows you to upgrade a new force power that you have or to unlock a new one. which is a good segue to talk about the gameplay, specifically the combat. So generally speaking, the combat can be broken down into two categories, melee and ranged. So first I'll talk about the ranged combat. So now ranged combat gives you a variety of weapons to use, such as your standard blaster rifle that the stormtroopers use, to the Wookiee crossbow, and more. Each of these weapons really falls into a pretty standard category of a rifle weapon that's good at medium to short range, a weapon that's a sniper rifle or sniper laser. Of course, you have your grenade launcher and shotgun styled weapons, and your rocket launcher styled weapon as well. Each of these weapons also comes with a secondary fire mode. So for the blaster rifle, the E11 I believe it's called, its primary fire is a very slow single shot rate of fire, but it's decently accurate at medium to short ranges. And its secondary fire mode allows it to fire much faster compared to its primary mode, but at the cost of reduced accuracy. The blaster pistol is the same way, as its primary fire rate is slow and does low damage, but for its secondary fire, you can hold down, at least on the PC, you can hold down the right mouse button, and it'll charge up a shot. And this charged shot is much more powerful than the standard primary mode. But of course the charged shot also uses up more ammo as well. Overall, I found ranged combat was far more useful at the start of the game in the first few missions compared to the later half of the game. Because at the beginning of the game, your character's lightsaber skills and force power abilities are still at a low level, and have not been fully upgraded to their maximum capabilities. But as I mentioned, once you get to the second half of the game though, and your lightsaber skills and force powers are at the max, then really ranged combat becomes very situational. So you might need it to deal with certain enemies such as hazard stormtroopers, in which case the rocket launcher or the grenade launcher weapons are best used against them. But for any of the other just regular enemies, like just the average stormtrooper, at that point, your lightsabers and force powers are perfectly capable of dealing with them. Now onto the melee or lightsaber combat. This is where the game really shines. Lightsaber combat is hands down the best feature in the game. In fact, it's actually one of the best melee systems of any game I've played. Dealing with ranged enemies such as Imperial troopers or mercenaries is pretty easy with the lightsaber, especially as I mentioned in the later levels, because you can just deflect the shots right back at them and it'll do damage to them, and it allows you to just close the distance between you and them without taking any real damage. And for most of those enemies, just one slice with the lightsaber is going to bring them down. But now, fighting other lightsaber users, such as the Sith cult, is a whole nother thing entirely. These guys are much more difficult to bring down, depending on the level of the enemy that you're fighting. But personally, I found that no matter what level they were, it was always fun engaging in lightsaber combat with them. Because both you and the Sith are, swinging away at each other, and you're jumping around, and you're using force powers, and the whole thing is just really fun and fast-paced. Although maybe sometimes a little bit too fast, because it's hard to find an opening from which to strike. Admittedly, it took me a while to understand the system, and I still don't quite fully understand it. And there's probably other people out there who are much better at explaining it in much more detail than I am. But overall for me, the fact is, it's just really fun. Especially when, you're in this prolonged battle with this Sith lightsaber user, and, the two of you get to a point where both your lightsabers are locked together, and there's just various things you can do to get out of that lock. You can force push them out, or you can, if you're dual wielding two lightsabers, then you can throw one of them around the dude and it'll come and strike him from behind or from the side and instantly kill him. And whenever you get a kill off one of these Sith, it always goes into slow motion, and you can get some really cool cinematic moments when that happens.
Face me, Jedi.
And at the start of the game, you start off with just one lightsaber, and about halfway through it, you get the choice of having a second lightsaber and dual wielding it with your first one, or you can get a staff saber, like the one that Darth Maul uses in the movies. And each provides a slightly different fighting style compared to just having one lightsaber. You can also use force powers, of which there are two types. There's light side force powers and dark side force powers. And as you successfully complete missions throughout the game, you can level up or unlock these force powers. Let's take healing, for example. So rank 1 of healing, you have to actually physically stop and heal yourself, which means that you can't engage during combat while healing. But later you can get rank 2 of healing, and that will allow you to heal up while still in combat. And rank 3 basically just increases the rate at which the healing occurs so that it happens faster. You recover more health faster. So now, moving on to the graphics and the sound of the game. So since this game was initially released back in 2003 on the id Tech 3 engine, by today's standards in video game graphics, this game is definitely outdated. But there are some mods that you can download that add higher resolution textures to maybe make the game look a little bit better. But overall, really, I think the gameplay makes up for the outdated graphics. And as for the music and sound effects of the game, the soundtrack is pretty much just the soundtrack that you hear in the Star Wars movies made by John Williams. And since the John Williams songs are great, and since the game's set in the Star Wars universe, it makes sense to use John Williams scores in it. As for the sounds, they are basically just the sounds that you would expect in most Star Wars movies and other media, such as the blaster rifles making the iconic pew-pew sound, the lightsabers when they clash together, also the voice acting as well, Chewbacca, and especially the voice acting for Luke, actually. I don't know who the voice actor was for Luke in this game. I know it was not Mark Hamill, but whoever this guy was, he did a very good job of sounding like young Mark Hamill in the original Star Wars movie trilogy.
However, since there are still so few of us, we will be assigning multiple students to one master. So, Route Theron, you will be assigned to Master Horn.
And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I really haven't delved into the multiplayer aspect of the game. From what I've read up on forums and other videos on YouTube that I've seen, the multiplayer does seem like it's a lot of fun. Especially this mod for the multiplayer called Movie Battles 2, which greatly expands the lightsaber combat in the game, and it also allows you to play as a bunch of different races and famous characters from the Star Wars universe, such as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Darth Maul, and Kylo Ren. It also adds new locations to play on, such as Naboo and Cloud City. So in conclusion, overall I had a lot of fun playing this game. I think it's probably I think it's definitely the best Star Wars game that I've played. To be fair, I haven't played that many Star Wars games. I think the only other Star Wars game I've played was Empire at War, which was a strategy game. So I'd say they're not exactly the same in terms of their gameplay, but I definitely had more fun with this game than I did with Empire at War. Not that Empire at War is a bad game or anything, just that with this game, I mean, they really nailed down the lightsaber combat with this game. And I'm really surprised that no other game developer has tried to mimic this type of melee system in this game. And I mean, like, it doesn't have to be a Star Wars game. Like, you could actually take this melee system and transfer it over to any other video game, with a different setting. It could be like a fantasy medieval type setting, and you could just use that for like the sword combat in the game or something. Because yeah, I really think that that's the strongest point of this game, and it would be cool to see that type of melee system in other games. So, and most of my criticisms I think really are minor ones in the grand scheme of things, so I would definitely recommend picking this game up the next time it's on sale on Steam. So, thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video or thought the review was helpful, you can hit the like button or the dislike button if not, and let me know in the comments below if you've played the game and if you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks again for watching, and have a good day.
Ah!